Welcome back to the Fleeting Conversations podcast. My name is Matthew Leffler, the armchair attorney. I am so grateful that you've taken the opportunity to join me today as we continue to have these conversations, fleeting though they may be. As always, I have to start off with saying thank you to my friends at DAT, Dial a Truck. Since 1978, DAT has been helping truckers find loads. Brokers use DAT too, apparently. Just last week, for those of you who didn't have a chance to attend, I was at DATCon, DATCon. It was an absolutely marvelous experience, and I was so grateful for the chance to talk to people in this industry, shippers, brokers, motor carriers, about the biggest legal issues facing this incredibly dynamic industry. Nuclear verdicts, AB5, FTC non-competition agreements. Oh, yeah. We talked about all those things and so much more. And we're going to continue that conversation next week when I have Jason Miller from the Eli Broad College of Business at MSU, as well as Ken Adamo, Chief of Analytics for DAT. We're going to talk about the market. Is it better? Is it worse? Is the cycle into a new cycle? All those things and so much more. Now, I feel seen today. I feel seen because I'm wearing my Project 44 vest. I love visibility software, and I love vests that have zippers because as a father of four, there's always something I have to keep in my pocket. And if I have a zipper, I'm probably not going to lose it. I'll probably still lose it. Now, here's the thing. Last week, I also had the opportunity to attend the Broker Carrier Summit, one of the newest kind of conventions, trade shows, things we have in the business right now. Motor carriers and brokers getting a chance to break bread and connect on what is happening in our incredibly dynamic supply chain. And I had a chance to speak to some of my friends while I was there. And one of my friends I got a chance to speak with, you're going to know him, many of you know him, is Alex Mai. He is the founder and CEO of Mutha Trucker, one of the most successful media and YouTube channels out there in our industry. There's so much to talk about in the business of moving freight. We just saw a recent study released that was paid for by the FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, talking about the driver shortage. Is there a driver shortage? Will there ever be a driver shortage? Has there been a driver shortage? That is really interesting. If you haven't had a chance to read that full report, I will make sure to link it in the show notes because I think it's important. The nature of driving a truck has never been easy. Safely delivering freight on time and undamaged is difficult even under the absolute best circumstances. And what we have seen over the last 44 years since deregulation is a fundamental change in the business of moving freight. Back in the day, 1980s, drivers were making on average, let's say about $38,000, $39,000 a year. You adjust that for inflation, that number is closer to $130,000, $150,000 a year. It's a manifestly different business. And so for many for-hire motor carriers, their challenge has been, how do I discover and hire and retain top talent for my business? And in our industry, the turnover rate for most of the over-the-road truckload motor carriers is anywhere on the good side, 77%. On the not so good side, it's over 100%, meaning for every 10 people you hire, you may lose 10 people. That is a symptom of a broader problem. The job isn't what it's being described to be. So from the motor carrier's perspective, they do in fact see a shortage. There is a shortage of people willing to work for the compensation and the conditions currently being offered. But on the converse side, there's also a lot of drivers who are saying, this business isn't what I thought it was going to be. I can't find safe and affordable parking. I can't find profitable loads. And I have a challenge to make. Now, before I bring on my guest today, I want to also mention we saw the reports from the International Road Check, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance. Now, I'm a lawyer, so I like to think about safety and compliance. It's part of the gig. The road check results are depressing and unsurprising. 23% of all commercial vehicles inspected, 23% of all commercial vehicles inspected failed the inspection, unsafe at any speed. And many people will tell me, Matt, is that an aberration? Is it just this weird time of the year because the market's not doing great? The answer is no, ladies and gentlemen. The safety of our commercial vehicles are not what it should be. 1 in 5 commercial vehicles are unsafe at any speed. I use this analogy at DatCon. I use this analogy at Broker Care Summit. I'm going to use it for you today. And I've probably said it before. Imagine I'm a grocery store and I have 5 gallons of milk, and each gallon of milk, we don't really know a lot about it, but I tell you, one of 5 gallons of milk that I currently have is unsafe, but you have to buy one. You'd say, Matt, I would prefer not to buy milk from you. I'd say that's unfortunate. That is your only choice. You have to choose 1 in 5 of these gallons of milk, knowing that 20% are unsafe. That's our supply chain. That's where we find ourselves. Now, the voice of the trucker is often overshadowed, let's say. The voices of the brokers, the organizations that support the brokers, the big motor carriers, their voices are loud and powerful, well funded. The voice of the trucker over time has been eroded. The power of organized labor in our society is different than it was 44 years ago. Now, I will mention in 75 days, we may once again see what the power of organized labor can do to America. That is January 15th, 2025, when the ILA strike, the International Longshoremen's Association, the contract is done. The extension that was granted with the U.S. Maritime Alliance is over, and the fight of automation continues. So we see another 45,000 dock workers go on strike. Hard to tell. We've been covering that for some time. But what about the trucker? What about the people who move freight across this great country? What is their challenge? Who is their voice? Well, one incredible voice in this business is my next guest, Alex Mai, the founder and CEO of Mutha Trucker. So without further ado, let me bring on my good friend, Alex. Alex, how are you?
Hey, what's going on, brother? Hey, you're a pro at this, man. You do this for a living or what?
I do it from time to time. It's one of these things. I imagine probably similar for you. I got to recording because I realized I had no videos of my father when he was my age, and my dad was a roadway guy back in 1976. So I would love to know how my father was like when he was my age. I just don't know. So I started recording because I wanted to have that record for my kids, and I have so many of them. But this is about you, man. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm out here in the Houston area. Just moved from South Florida. Just got some bucket lists done. One of my bucket lists was always to, cash my parents out on a house. So I was able to do that just the other day. So that was pretty good.
Congratulations.
And
That's
I appreciate
amazing.
that. Yeah, when you live for others and you do things for others, yeah, you feel a little bit more whole and you feel good. And so I'm just here as uh, I don't even know, I truly think like you almost find passion as you try things. And anybody that tells you like they just felt a certain type of way about something right from the get go is a lie. It's something that even for the truck drivers, I was a driver myself for over 10 years.
Wow.
My uncle was a mover, and every summer since I was a kid, I'd move furniture with him. And the goal from my mom was to make me hate trucking. So I'd go get a college degree. Right. And so, I go to Sac State, get a college degree. And then I find out that I'm stuck at Walgreens as an assistant manager, wondering, is 14.50 an hour where my life is. Right. And, my uncle pretty much pulls me to the side and says, hey, why don't you become a mover like me? And I'm like, I was helping you every summer for free, man. You know, I don't want to do that at all. And, he started kind of showing me some paychecks and showing me on the mover side that you could potentially make, over 6 figures doing it. And,
Yeah.
For most people, that type of money, you're just like, are you serious? Like you could do that? So pretty much quit and started my journey like at, 24, 25 and started just working my way up. And, then guess what happens? You start getting bored on the road. I'm gonna date myself a little bit, right? But all your friends are on MySpace and they're having a
Yeah.
great time, right? And so you're thinking to yourself, my tire just popped. I'm on the side of the road. It's raining. Let me cry myself to sleep. So next thing you know, you start taking pictures of the food you eat. Oh, maybe a little bit here, a little bit there. Where, hey, I'm gonna tell anyone that wants to be a truck driver now, you ain't gonna enjoy none of it. You're gonna see Vegas. You're gonna see the Statue of Liberty from afar, but you are gonna keep on driving because the hours of service. Where I'm sure we will have a lot of conversations about. I know you love the topic of safety and things like
Yeah.
that, but and then pretty much, long story short or short story long, started making some videos that nobody watched for about 5, 6 years. And I just kind of started dialing in. And I think where it really changed for me was, when you like stop making things about you and you start kind of making it about others, that's where it changed because I was making videos about things I liked. And guess what? Nobody cared about the things I liked. But when people are like, hey, Alex, you have 400 people following you here, we're having a hard time finding some parking. Can I talk about that on your show? And I'm like,
Yeah.
sure. And that's where I'm learning about the industry, right? And so after posting over 8,000 videos on all these social media platforms, which is a crazy amount of videos, in the last 9, 10 years, you start learning a thing or two. So,
Yeah.
we are where we are today, and really, it's just a platform. I learn from what drivers tell me, but for the most part, it's mostly just a platform where people email me. And when they tell me, 10, 20, 30 people, message me and say, hey, we just got, we went to work in Chicago at the PepsiCo or something like that. And they're telling us we don't have a job anymore. Guess what? I'm going to start looking things up, start looking at articles. So I kind of start reverse engineering those type of things. And that's kind of where we are today, is just being a platform for the truck drivers and getting their voice out there. So I think that's why, drivers kind of watch what I talk about, because it's really not what I talk about. It's what they want to talk about. And I don't censor anything, which
Awesome.
probably wouldn't be, that's probably why I have zero sponsors,
Well, after this, I think we'll find some for you. But
Yeah.
what I love is like, you don't know where you are unless you know where you've been, and you really don't know where you're going unless you know where you are. So there's this continuation of the story of trucking. And when I was a kid, I mean, when I was born, my father had been at Roadway for almost a decade, and the way I thought about trucking was trucking meant my father was gone half the year. That was what
Right.
trucking meant to me, and it was like all I wanted was to say, I don't want to have that experience. I don't want to be in a business where I have to be gone all the time. And as you kind of outline your story of trucking, you start off by saying, I want to make a living for myself. And that's what so many men and women across this country, millions of people, do every day, is they make a living by moving freight from point A to point B. And occasionally they take a rest at point C. At what point did you realize that your voice was going to resonate in a way that not just a few people heard, a few hundred people, a few thousand, but millions of people who have seen your content? When did you realize that?
It's funny because I can tell you the exact moment. I had probably about like 400 probably like subscribers on YouTube, and hey, I'm not gonna lie to you. Once you get over 100, you're pretty much a big deal. Okay, like I was a big deal, and pretty much anyone that would stare at me, I'd stare at them back. Like, this guy probably recognizes me, from the crap videos that I make on my phone, right? So, clearly nobody recognizes you. But what ends up happening is I believe I was at a Love's, or I was at either a Love's or a Pilot, and I was just walking, and on my 34-hour reset at the truck stop, I would go ahead and try to interview drivers, just kind of find my way, right? And basically, I interviewed this guy that's like, man, Alex, I was a felon, and when I got out, I could not get a job. It took me literally like a year and a half of research. For all you drivers out there, if you need a job, call up this guy. And literally, when I did that interview that maybe 100 people watched, a guy actually stopped me and said, hey, man, I just got to let you know, I was a felon as well, and I couldn't find any work. I saw your video because I looked it up, and I called this guy, and I was able to get a job. And this was the craziest thing he said to me, and it warmed my heart to today. He goes, I appreciate it, but I'm so thankful that my kid could be in a safe school zone. because I don't have kids myself. And I was like, dang, like this is crazy, you know? So like you're the dopamine of just like doing something good
Yeah, there's
was,
nothing better than helping somebody. There's nothing better than that.
oh, dude. I, I mean, it sounds so cliche and it sounds so cheesy and corny, but like, I, dude, it was the coolest thing ever. And I really, for selfish me, I wanted to duplicate that. And so next thing you know, I'm asking more people and I'm just like, hey, you know, hey, if you need help with this or that, let me know. You know, you could jump on my channel, and let people know. You know, people are finding their way around my channel, and I'm just having fun. And then of course I do one of those, and the next day it's like, hey, you know, um, don't park over here. You know, you're gonna get your truck towed, or don't eat sushi at a truck stop. So I mean, I go from like great information, then go back to like kicking a dead horse, you know. And so I really I didn't think of myself as media, you know what I mean, or like a journalist. And still today, I don't think of myself that way. It was, and so it's just one of those things where at that very moment, I was like, dude, social media, like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, I'm like, social media is going to be something different.
The power to
Yeah.
reach so many people without the
Yeah.
barriers of having to pay for it. It's incredible. You're exactly right.
You know, and so that's no, and so yeah, that was kind of like that first moment where I got to help somebody.
Mhm.
And then from there, uh, now I just, hey, whatever people want to talk about, hey, we throw it up. And I know some of the stuff I'm like, man, this is a doozy, you know, like, or I don't really want to talk about this one. Like I knew Yellow was going out of business probably 5 months before anyone else knew
Yeah.
they were going out of business, just because every driver was like, Alex, there's something going on here. My pay's not looking like right. My hours aren't looking right, you know. And so I was starting to investigate stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
you know, moving forward, it kind of like it became a thing where,
Absolutely. You became like the amplification tool, the inquisitory nature of you being wanting to learn about something, people giving you information, then you taking that. That was a great example. I had heard they had missed the pension payment to the Central States Fund and that they were
mm,
trying to get an injunction to stop the union from striking. And I'm listening to the court. I'm like, oh my gosh, the lawyer for Yellow just said, Your Honor, if they strike tomorrow, we're bankrupt by Friday. I'm like, oh my goodness, the end of an era. Just to kind of pull that thread a little bit, the folks who were drivers for Yellow and Roadway and Consolidated Freightways, this is a generation that is gone. It's disappearing. And you look back, and these are the people that moved America. Yellow was in business for 99 years. There we go. It's incredible seeing that kind of speed of change over the last few years. What has been the most surprising thing for you over the last couple of years in this business?
you know, the most surprising thing, and these days I'm just not that surprised, is like I knew we were in a definite transportation recession years before people are just kind of talking about that now, right? But like we've been in, you know, of course, COVID happens, the world stops, the world ramps up. You know, it's like the gold rush of trucking. But next thing you know, it's just like businesses after businesses are going. I knew something was wrong, and I talked about it in my videos when I remember when Freightline 2016 Freightliners were only like 25 grand uh, with 500,000 miles. And then after COVID happened, they were selling for like 70,000.
I saw dry vans going for $80,000, 53-foot vans with swing doors. Like, are you kidding me? That's a $30,000 box. But no, you're right. Like the demand for the equipment went sky high.
Yeah. And so it was just seeing this crash happen like before your eyes almost, where everybody's holding the bag and you know, and it gets to the point where now people are just working for, I don't want to say their ego, but for their livelihood, right? I mean, you have family that respects you and says, man, you know, I want to be like Johnny who has 5 trucks, and Johnny's over here with crazy payments and just trying to keep it up because he's like, I'm the provider for my family. I'm a provider for these drivers. And also everybody looks up to me. So now I'm pretty much working for free just to try to stay alive.
Absolutely.
and you know,
To pull on the thread you mentioned earlier about like the jobs you can do after you, like if you have a criminal record, this is one of the few careers there is. Like there's construction, there's turning wrenches and being a mechanic, but to do this job, to drive in a truck, it is one of the few pathways you can do without a college degree. And it seems like this moment we've been at war with truckers for 44 years. Like the compensation's gone down, the ability to safely park has gone down, insurance has gone up. What are you hearing from your viewers these days? Like how hard is it in the market right now?
oh, I mean, they're pretty much uh, most of them, if they have their own truck, have parked their trucks and gone and worked for a company, and a lot of them, they're telling me, they could stay at home and be an Uber driver and make more money,
Exactly.
and so it's just a tough time. But when it's all, and I mean, there's still, I mean, if we talk about the positive parts about it, a job, you clock into a 9 to 5, you got this boss that micromanages you, and then they're just breathing down your neck. I mean, trucking, if you've had that type of lifestyle, you get into trucking. Yeah, you got to pick up a load. Yeah, you got to get there safely. But pretty much no one's bothering you besides every car cutting you off.
Yeah, every four-wheeler out there. Oh, now I want to talk about that because that's an interesting piece you brought up about the surveillance aspect of this business. So long time ago, it was paper logs. You were going from place to place. We see the ELD mandate. So now you have to have a government mandated subscription service. And we see the increase of course, dash cams facing outward, but this pathway of driver facing cameras. You have companies like Project 44 or Trucker Tools or Four Kites that are winding, where are you? What are you doing? What's going on? What is it like to be a modern day truck driver with all of these technologies around you, all this regulation around you? Are you still autonomous, or do you have this level of like surveillance that you just can't shake off?
I would say there's a two-part question. One, if you're a new driver, you're just going to follow the rules and you're just going to go with it. But if you're a free bird and you're back in the paper log days, and now you got the ELD, and now you got driver facing in cameras and out and all that, I mean, you pretty much, you're feeling pretty trapped. This becomes a job instead of a lifestyle. And that's what really is happening, right? Like all the regulations that are happening are just like everything else in life. The people that are doing it right, they get hurt. They're the ones that have to follow these crazy regulations, when the people that are doing this unsafely or illegally don't care and making it worse for everybody else. I mean,
That's right. What do you think about speed regulators? So that's like the thing that we've seen the FMCSA talk about this. They came out initially saying 68 miles an hour, and they're like, no, never mind. We're just kidding. Not 68, but maybe 68. What do you think?
Let's talk about that. Okay. So, so it matters where you're coming from. I would almost side a little bit on like the way OOIDA feels about this a little bit. I talked to like Todd Spencer and those guys over there. And right now, I would say a single owner operator's only advantage that they have over a mega carrier is truly they could follow the speed limit and get somewhere faster. That I truly think that is the number one advantage, that you could get there faster. And of course, if I'm a big mega carrier, I'm not calling any mega carriers out. I'm going to want them to drive as slow as possible, because I'm hoping if they drive slower, they're going to get into less accidents. And then I'm also knowing that, hey, who's doing all the lobbying for this stuff?
It's I'm talking about it's the big guys. Oh, absolutely.
So I mean, I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers here, but I think the main advantage that a single owner operator has over the big boys and girls is you could go the speed limit, but you could get and expedite your load there faster.
I'm gonna ruffle feathers because that's what I do. Alex, so this is how I look at EL. This is ELDs 2.0. So the ELDs were being used by the mega carriers. The big guys already had the ELDs, and they lobbied very heavily to say, "Hey, we want everyone to have this because it's going to make it equal for us to compete." And as you've outlined about the differentiator for a smaller owner operator to be able to go faster, make more miles, this is actually why I think they want to chop it away, because I don't think they want that. They don't want the smaller fleets to have that competitive advantage. I would I've been saying this for a long time. There's a lot of advantages to going slower. Better for your fuel, better for your tires, better for your motor, better for your maintenance. A lot of great things. Maybe even in your insurance company would be like, yeah, I think that's great you go slow. But I think it should be voluntary. I think that the pathway that we're seeing for mandating a speed across all the country at a federal level is an attack against the small motor carriers. That was, I think, the design is to say, we don't want you going fast because you end up being more productive than us. So I think that you're right. I think that the special thing for owner operators is the ability to go faster and have that agility. And I think the big fleets are like, I don't want you to have that agility.
Oh,
I
oh
don't
no.
want you.
And and sticking on that topic of just, um, trying to fight this machine of what have you. I mean, I get this question all the time, from people that aren't truck drivers or in the transportation world, and they say, Alex, why do truck drivers hate electric trucks so much? Or, why is that, right? Isn't technology good? And my answer is almost straight to how the speed limiters are. If you want to go buy an electric truck for triple the price, you could go and do that.
With no
But
infrastructure to support it.
exactly. But if they're just throwing it down your throat and saying, hey, this truck or this fleet or this, small trucking company you have, hey, in the next 10, 15 years, you're not allowed to use these trucks anymore. You know what I mean? And so it's really that truck drivers don't hate the things that are coming. They hate that they're being forced to use them without them having the option to say yes or no to it, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like the carriage before the horse or whatnot. So, I just wanted to explain to the people that, they're always like, man, why are these truck drivers so mad at the world? Isn't all this technology good stuff? And a lot of it could be good, but when it's, hey, you're gonna do this, and if you don't, then you're going to jail. It's like
There's some really good research on the ELD stuff. So when it comes to the ELDs, what we saw happen was that drivers started to speed. So they were actually being less safe because they used this technology. So the idea was, oh, we're going to make it safer on the roads. But the reality was like, no, maybe it solves some hours of service issues, but it forces drivers to go faster. And now the FMCSA is like, okay, well, people are speeding more. Maybe we should find some other way to slow that down. I fundamentally believe if you take ELDs, you put in speed limiters, this is the natural progression to the fully autonomous truck. If everyone's going the same speed, everyone's digitally connected, that pathway seems almost inevitable. So electrification, there's some challenges. Like you point out, it's expensive. The infrastructure is not there to support them. They're heavier. They're a lot heavier. So you have these challenges with that powertrain. But robots are coming. What do you think about this? Have you thought about, have your viewers thought about the coming of autonomous trucks, like for the middle mile or some of the over the road applications?
Oh yeah, no, this I talk about it on the show, right? And I could probably show you this. What was it, a couple years ago? I alleged the crap out of this. Allegedly, because I did not. I talked to my lawyer and he said, you better allege the crap out of this, right? So someone that worked deep for like Too Simple at the time, the Chinese company, self-driving trucking company, said, hey, I don't feel safe with this. Here's the video that I'm saying. And I said allegedly like crazy, that basically, the video where, two guys are in a truck and then next thing you know, they hit the autonomous running button and it hits into like the median or whatnot. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that video?
I have, yeah.
So I released that video. So that video got like 5, 6, 7 million views.
We'll put that in the show notes. That's a great video. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And then so when that happened, right? Of course, I allegedly the crap out of this. I didn't even say names. I just said, hey, and then they went out on to Wall Street Journal and outed themselves saying, no, we know this is happening and we were going to go public with all these things already. So that's good that they did that, but it pretty much tanked their company,
This is the most interesting part of the autonomous conversation. So we spoke at the beginning of the show a little bit about the ILA strike, the International Longshoremen's Union. This is the most powerful union that's ever existed in America, from my opinion. And the fight that they have right now is not about wages. I mean, the wages fight was solved within 3 days, and the wage was an increase of like 62% over 6 years. Automation's the fight. And we look at automation and say, well, what is the point? And the point is increased efficiency, lower labor costs. We know in trucking, it's fuel, labor, assets. Those are your three biggest items to spend. What about the cybersecurity aspect? So you put a truck on the road, you put a crane in the system that is autonomous. Who can access it? What can hostile foreign powers do? So I think this idea of like, what can a hostile state actor do in the advent of technology? And I don't see the FMCSA ever talking about that. I never see that conversation. What do you think? That's when you because you brought that up with the Too Simple example. It seems like that would be a natural fear that our government should be thinking before we go robot. Maybe we should pause and make sure the cybersecurity aspect is something we've already solved, as opposed to we'll deal with it when it pops up, because there's no reason to worry about a problem that's not here yet.
Well, see, that's interesting. I mean, 100%, I think that, right? And, I talked about on my show as well that, hey, I don't know if you've seen it, but when a train breaks down on the middle of the highway, people go and rob those trains. Like, I've seen that news, right? I mean, there's going to be some crazy cowboy Wild Wild West stuff happening regardless, right? But I think the big thing too that we need to consider is I talk to like the big companies, the mega carriers, the Knight and Swifts, that they don't want self-driving trucks. It's interesting because back then when they were looking at it, I think with Aurora, I made a video stating that, hey, does Knight and Swift not care about their drivers because they're looking into this, technology? And so what happened? They called me and I flew over there on my own dime. It wasn't sponsored. That's why I told them. And that's why I'm telling you as well. And we had a conversation, right? And so it was one of those conversations where they said that they really wanted to use it for safety aspect, so that if the autonomous technology can see that far out, maybe that can help some of their drivers see that far out as well. So that was what they were saying, but they also are just trying things, I honestly think, almost for PR reasons. Don't quote me straight up on this. Well, we can look this up later, but I remember I was at NATSO, and I think the guy at Cummins did a little keynote talk. And then after, I was like, hey, great talk, and he was talking about how he didn't see self-driving and all that coming for a while. But then he also gave me something very interesting. He said that California themselves puts a quota on how many zero emission type engines they have to sell first before they can actually sell the things that make them money. So I go, wait a minute, Cummins. So you also know that these don't make you any money? They're like, California wants us to sell these first, because if they don't allow us to enter the market. So I wonder, if that's the case for so many things, right? Does PepsiCo really care about Tesla, or is it PR at the maximum? Like,
the phrase we've heard about that is called greenwashing. It's the ability to make yourself appear that you have done this great thing. But I think your point on the California Air Resource Board, CARB, many people are like, look at CARB and go, what? Oh, yes. They were the ones who mandated trailer skirts, for example. And trailer skirts in our industry weren't required until CARB instituted their rule. And if you went to that state without the skirts, it was $1,000 a day fine. So you had to retrofit your fleet to have those things. I look at the robots, and this is what I think is an interesting thing to think about. We have like Kodiak, for example, driving autonomous trucks today in Texas, between Houston and Dallas. Every single day, there's a safety driver there. But twice now in the state of California, Governor Brown has vetoed a law that would have mandated a human being in the cab of that truck for autonomous vehicles. So I feel like this idea that they're far away, I don't believe it. I think they're going to be here very quickly. And when they are here, it'll be like deregulation all over again. The biggest shift change in our entire economy, when this vast piece of the middle mile, for example, gets automated.
So let me ask you this question then, right? Do you think it's the transportation world pushing this, or do you think it's the big time investors that bought in early and it's like solar? Is it remember when solar was so big
Yeah.
where like everybody was just investing like crazy? So who do you think really is the push on this? I mean, if we had billions of dollars into something, we would want that to kind of work for a little bit before we pumped and dumped it, right?
I think that the people who push this are the American population. We are addicted to things
Mm,
being fast at our shelves and cheap. And when deregulation was first pitched back in like when Carter was president, it was we'll save $8 billion a year on transportation. And you go back to 1980, 60 to 70% of all truckers were Teamsters. They were union drivers. And this was the dismantling of organized labor in our supply chain, at least to an extent. And I think that the only way that you can save money on transportation, which is almost half the cost of a good at this point, is the transportation of that good, is what can you remove? What can go away? And if we know fuel is one thing, that's why hydrogen is being talked about and electrification, but labor. How do you solve
mm,
labor? We did it with owner operators. We said, we're going to break up the big Teamster unions. We're going to break up the big trucking companies, but it's not enough. You look at Heartland, one of the most profitable historically truckload carriers in the market, and they're losing money. Like you
yeah,
can't run a fleet these days. So
yeah.
I think it's us. I think it's me. I think I'm the problem because I want things faster and I want them cheaper. Maybe there are investor side of things too, but I really fundamentally believe that we just want
Mm,
things to be cheaper.
right. No, and that can be, is it like Thanos, right? Like we're going to the Marvel world right now. It's like, do we take out all the hardworking people to make, things right now? The technology is expensive, but once you streamline that, it becomes cheaper, right? Um, is that what's happening, right? And so it's a heartbreak because I champion drivers. I want them to do well, and I think but okay, if we're on the topic, Matthew, of people, would you say that a plane pretty much can land itself, but people just feel more comfortable with a pilot? So, like, would you agree that people would feel more safe with somebody in the truck that's 80,000 pounds versus not?
I think if people knew how dangerous our equipment was on the roads, they would be terrified. I think most Americans
Right.
have no concept of how dangerous the roads are. But to your point, I think there is an aspect I definitely agree. What we call it safety theater or security theater, but the
Mm,
comfort of knowing there's a human being there. My belief, and again, this is just my own kind of thinking. If you
right.
were to say to somebody that 80% of trucks and trailers are unsafe, you would go, that's bananas. I think if you have autonomous trucks, they would never have that level of lack of maintenance. You would have to have these things 99.9% safe at all times. So I think if we were to have that as the true case, that the assets are always going to be safer if they're autonomous, maybe the adoption is more. But we've seen the governors of liberal states say we're not going to mandate a safety driver. So whether it's in a drayage application or it's other like over the road middle mile, I think we're going to come accustomed to autonomous vehicles, and it will be faster than I think many expect because these roadways there's enough data at this point to say we can automate Houston to Dallas. LTL isn't going anywhere. Final mile is not going anywhere, but it's that middle mile where I think you're going to see this biggest shift change in the next maybe 5-10 years.
Right. I've been in conversations like 5 years ago with a lot of these guys explain to me what they're trying to do. And they're pretty much following the railroad type of strategy where it's like you're saying, right? One person. So a truck brings it near the highway or freeway, and then there's going to be a low drop yard. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then from there, that's where the autonomous goes all the way on the 5 or the 10 or the 95 and goes straight for 500 or 1,000 miles. And then it's going to stop at this drop yard. And then this, LTL person or short haul person is going to take it from there. And that's kind of what they see it, right? No, it's all really interesting. We go back to the ILWA. Let's go back a little bit further. Let's go back to when like the Teamsters did that record deal for UPS, right? I think
Yeah.
I think since we're on the topic of people kind of screw over people. So as soon as this strike happens, and these people are like, we're not going to work, we're not going to go to the ports. I covered that in Houston and whatnot. They're like, you know what? okay, we'll give you what you want. But in the back of their head, they're like, never again.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
we're everything's got to be autonomous. You know what I mean? Like after that day, they're pissed off. And I look back at UPS and I go, they got this record deal package, and then what they do, they like fire 30% of their workforce.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? So it's we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot when it comes to some of this stuff as well. Because do you think a lot of it has to do with saving money, or is the other part too like they just think like people are just hard to work with?
I think the mentality has happened where historically in transportation, it was workers versus management. And there was this friction that was just completely unsolvable. And there was a pathway you reconcile these disputes. I think what we see today is workers are saying, I'm watching my company make more money than they've ever made in their entire history. And I am in the same position that I was last year or the last 2 years. And as inflation creeps up, I'm no better off than I was 3 or 4 years ago. Why are they doing better? I want a fair shake. But I think the other path of it is sometimes these companies aren't making a ton of money and they're not as profitable as they used to be. And so I think it's this ebb and flow of people always wanting to try and get a little bit better than they used to be and just kind of falling further and further behind. And when that's all said and done, it becomes this massive battle between what used to be the organized labor. And then it's just this massive fragmented thing where if you get mad at me, I fire you and I'm done. Like that's the whole point of what deregulation was designed to do. But it's an interesting question. Now, there's a comment here in the chat I want to put up here because I think this one actually is pretty interesting for us. This is from Dad of Two Roadside. Corey, I love you, my friend. It says, talking about autonomous truck pre and post trip inspections.
Oh, let's go into this a little bit. So, I'm sure we all watched the video on this, right? Where now they have like this so they want the DOT to come out to the terminals to check everything first. Okay, maybe the DOT or the FMCSA is going to be the one that's going to actually save trucking for once, right? How much money does the government make from inspecting commercial vehicles? Right? Does that money start going away if they go full autonomy? I mean,
I think we're about to see the golden age mobile mechanics. So you look at people like Cox Automotive buying Dickinson, you see companies like Epica or Merit with thousands of human beings in service trucks. Riders, their new offering, they call it Wrench. It's not Wrench, Torque. It's called Torque. But these are mobile technicians going to sites to do inspections. I think with autonomous vehicles, you will have mobile service mechanics doing those pre-trip inspections every single route, every single trip. And if they do that, maybe if you're a truck driver and you get displaced, you can go into being a mechanic doing inspections. But I think that's the path I expect to see.
That's interesting. Because here's the thing, and I think any truck driver can tell you this. After you do your pre-trip inspection, you could drive down 20 miles and then have a problem.
That's right.
So,
absolutely. 100%.
So, okay, so if that's the case, now you have all these hundreds and thousands of trucks that the DOT signs off of that day before the day starts, and then they go on their way. I mean, maybe I'm being biased here, but that sounds a little dangerous.
I would say that like the vast majority of things we get knocked out of service are usually the BLTs, brakes, lights, and tires. Delicious on a sandwich, but problematic for trucks and trailers. So when you inspect something and you put them out of service, it's because a light maybe went out. Maybe light went out to your point, like 20 miles ago, it pumps out. But most time, like tire tread depth, brake lining, that's not something that happens right now. It happened a long time ago. You track it. What are you most excited about in the industry? So we've talked about some of the doom and gloom in the market. We talked about the technology. What are you really excited about?
I'm excited about this market taking a turn back because every damn person has been saying that third quarter, fourth quarter. Man, they've been saying this for the last, 2 years. But I'm telling you, I'm starting to talk to drivers, and they're starting to say that they're seeing rates start to creep up back a little bit, and really the rates really isn't the problem. The problem is that insurance, I think, is taking people out of bit. When we were at Broker Carrier Summit, I'll just kind of tie that into there. I was listening to your talk, and you're bringing up a couple of things about some of these big nuclear cases, and it's just, I don't know, man. It's just at the point where I truly feel like if it stays this low any longer, everybody's going to be out of business. So I think we're finally next year's got to be a good year.
I think
I'm
you're
there,
right.
man. I'm feeling it.
I think the market begins to change, like the cycle's ending. So the new cycle's beginning. I think Q1 or Q2 of next year, it's going to be a little bit more positive. I want to talk a little bit more about insurance, because this is a thing that many truckers absolutely hate me for this. And I'm against most everybody that I know when I talk about this issue of the minimum insurance required to operate a commercial vehicle interstate, going between states. It was established in 1980. That number is $750,000. It's never been adjusted for inflation. It's never been raised. Both the ATA and OOIDA have all said, like, leave it alone, don't touch it. And there was an act in Congress a couple months ago, maybe a couple years ago, called the Fair Compensation for Truck Crash Victims Act. It didn't pass. It never passes. No one's ever going to raise these rates. I do think you need to have higher insurance minimums for motor carriers. And I'd love to get your thoughts, because insurance is already too expensive. It is too expensive, but it's still not enough. It's still not enough.
I wonder all these truckers are not liking what you're saying about that. It's that these drivers are going broke out of here. But hey, I can be a smart guy. I can think about this. First off, hey, a lot of these loads, a lot of the brokers and people that want these drivers under these loads are already asking them to be more insured than the minimum anyways.
That's right.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, for a lot of people, that might not be changing too much, so, but I don't know. More regulation. I'm not about regulation. I mean, I know you're a lawyer, right? And I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't think more regulation helps anybody. If anything, this is how truck drivers feel, is the trucker feels like they hold the bag. They got to hold the insurance. They got to pay for the truck. They got to pay for the fuel. They got to pay for everything. And then whoever on the other line, whoever that is, that's giving them that load, they don't have as much skin in the game as they do.
I agree with that 100%. Absolutely.
So what the heck's up with that? That's the thing that truck drivers are really pissed about is, why are they over there having to hold the bag on every single thing? I mean, a car could hit them. It doesn't even matter. It still takes them out of work for 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, just everything is it makes so much more sense to be a paper pusher on the left side versus being the trucker that has to own the equipment, pay for the insurance. I mean, there's just so many things that could go wrong.
I think that's a really good topic to kind of, again, dive in a little bit deeper. So all the problems we see in supply chain, I feel, are actually features. They're not bugs. If you look back at deregulation, the idea was, if you were a driver, a union driver, and you saw a defective piece of equipment, and you said, I'm not going to drive that because that is unsafe. That is going to get fixed by a union mechanic, and you're not driving that truck, because if you did get forced dispatch on that vehicle, you're filing a grievance. Like, you're going to get your boss fired if you make them do that. And part of the plan, or part of the strategy, was, how do we reduce cost? And that's off the backs of truckers and mechanics and dock workers and material handlers. And how do we get an aspect where we can move things cheaper and not have the same kind of oversight? So I think, like, for me on the regulation side, I don't like speed limiters. I think that should not happen. That's against the entire idea of being a commercial driver, professional driver. Let the professional driver exercise their discretion. That's what they want to do. But on the insurance, I'm like, we use this phrase, and I'm sure your trucker audience knows. It's like, we say the word reduce capacity. Like, reduce capacity is, we need more small carriers to go bankrupt, because if they go bankrupt, then the big guys can get their wages up again. They can get their rates up again. And that's this, like, cycle of up and down. I don't know, man. I don't know the answer to that, because, like, I am, like, the villain of most stories, but I'm also sometimes on the side of the good guys. But for the brokers, I think as intermediaries, their value over time is going to get diminished. I think technology will replace parts of what they do. And I look at the data, like, 20 years ago, brokers moved 6% of freight. Today, they move like 20 some odd percent of the freight. Right. So every driver's dealing with these guys. And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm with you.
It's interesting, right? Yeah, it's interesting, because it's almost like, the brokers will be the first one that don't have a job.
That's right. I mean? Absolutely.
No disrespect to it, but anyone playing middle person, I'm not saying you don't work hard for the connections. I'm not saying any of those things, right? Because I have friends that work very hard, and I know they're good people. But I will say that if it stays this versus game, the middleman's the first one to get kicked off the boat.
That's what they've been offshoring it. So like you look at like these companies like Lean or Rapido or Zelle, and they're all like, take the labor in the United States and throw it offshore. And then you can't offshore the driver yet. As a last kind of topic, I want to get your thoughts on. So FMCSA has put out this proposal. It's in the initial stages of level 4 automation, which is a remote operator, and then level 5, which is remote assistance. So someone who's just helping the truck. And those regs are not done yet. They're still on the pathway. But what do you think about that? What do you think about remote operators, like a drone pilot? Do you see that as a thing that would be useful, or is that another terrifying future we don't want to live in?
Oh, I definitely have covered this before. I mean, all these topics always start pissing me off, but it's one of those things, right? Where my opinion alone on this is the driver's already in the truck and it's already this unsafe. And then you want to pilot this from 100 miles. You know what I mean? It changed the level field. If there's so there's no one in the truck. Okay, that's fine. But how about there's no one in the cars as well? Okay, then there wouldn't be a problem. But the fact is there's no one in the truck, but there's still people all around you. That's scary. I don't have to understand the technology to know that my 5G on my phone sometimes doesn't work well. How much G's does it take to cover that? And most of it, I think the technology now, isn't it all just sensory for the most part?
Oh, it's sensors, wiring harnesses. This is a great opportunity for mechanics. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm getting a paint, dude. You don't even need. You can have a paintball. So this is the stuff that scares me, right? So if the AI says the sky is blue, and a stop sign is red, and then someone shoots a paintball of blue on the stop sign, that truck will keep on going because it would honestly believe that was just the sky. And it would just keep on. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely, it is just so scary, man. It is so scary. I love these topics because they are here and they are things that are happening now as we speak. But I truly believe, for any truck drivers that are going to watch this or watching this now or carriers, the truck driver is going to be in the truck for a very long time because the technology behind it just doesn't warrant it safe enough that the public will feel safe without somebody inside. Maybe we'd be called pilots or something else, but there's going to be someone inside because as of now, I mean, how long have they had this technology, with the trains, and trains are on train tracks, right? I mean, that's kind of where my brain goes. I mean, there's still someone, are there places where there's legit trains that don't have nobody inside at all? Or is there still a conductor or what have you, in that train? Would you know the answer?
There are trains that run without any human intervention that are running on very select routes. Like trackless trolleys are another example of like we maybe close to fully autonomous. There's always a human being monitoring the system. I think what I would look at is like, how did containerization get adopted in this country? The longshoremen fought it forever. It got adopted because of the Vietnam War. They built the Port of Oakland. They built a bunch of containers, and they started moving freight to support the war effort. One of the big investors of Kodiak was a company called, though it's not a company, it's the Department of Defense. DOD put a bunch of money into Kodiak. So I think the military applications made see this stuff move first and then gradually make it into our commercial side. Let me ask this last question, Alex. At what point in your journey did you realize that there is no way to get out of the supply chain? Like, when did you find that out?
Clearly when people need their toilet paper. I mean, shoot, you would think that out of all the things that people would worry about, right? It'd be that toilet. I'll be honest, is every time, because I'm in South Florida, right? And so every time there's a hurricane coming, I mean, the gas stations that are there alone, they fill up just literally for a day at max 2. People don't understand how fast these things run out. The pandemonium that you just see in a gas station where the truck driver is just sick, or there's a small flood and the driver can't get there. And now people are beating each other up because they think that there's no fuel at this gas station. So they think the world's going crazy. It's the supply chain will never stop. It's never going to happen. The infrastructure is not there. 50 years from now, actually, I won't even say 50 years from now. I would say when there's a private lane just for this autonomous truck,
Yeah,
I'm gonna start getting a little nervous. You know what I'm talking. You know what I'm talking about. But
absolutely.
and I know they're investing in that stuff too. But no, to get back to your question, I mean, it's just I see it firsthand. I mean, I see it every single day. That as soon as a shipment is late, it doesn't get there. People freak the hell out.
We have the longshoreman strike and people start buying toilet paper and not realize we don't import toilet paper. There's plenty of toilet,
Exactly.
but people are irrational. Well, Alex, I am such a huge fan. I really want to thank you for taking time to join us today.
Yeah.
For where people can find more about what you do. I know we'll put your YouTube channel there, but where else can people
Thanks.
find you?
Hey, you can find me on LinkedIn now. You know, I started LinkedIn 9 months ago, and I really just started one because someone said, "You're not on LinkedIn." I mean, I guess you're not a real. You don't do what you say you do because you got to be on LinkedIn. I was like, all right, then I'll be on LinkedIn. You know what I mean? So Mutha Trucker News on everything. You can find me, and if you guys have any questions about anything, or you have some breaking news from your trucking company that you'd like to talk about, email me at muthatruckernews@gmail.com. And we could further these conversations that pretty much you and I cover on a weekly basis because, you know, we love pissing people off.
That's right, man. The company you keep is important, but the enemies you make are just as important. Dude, Alex, I am such a huge fan. Thank you for making time. It was great seeing the Broker Carrier Summit. Any other conferences you're going to be attending in the upcoming few weeks or months?
Sure. I think I'll land at Freight Waves, and then after that, I'll be at Louisville, things like that. I have another side that I do as well. I own a T-shirt apparel business, so wearing all the travel centers and stuff for Big Rig Tees. So I got to pretend to work sometimes. You know what I mean? I can't just play around all day long. But no, yeah. I go to about 15 of these a year. So if there's one that you think I need to be at, and so that we could cover, so truck drivers could have some information, I'm there, man. That's what I do.
Well, I will see you at F3, my friend. Well, I appreciate you making time. Alex Mai, the founder, CEO of Mutha Trucker. Thank you for coming, man. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, boss. Thanks.
Take care. Well, that is our show, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I can't thank you enough for stopping by. Thanks to our friends at DAT for supporting this podcast and helping us get information out to people who want to learn about what it takes to move things across this great country. Safely delivering freight on time and undamaged was never easy. It's not getting any easier. And the technology is changing every single day, just as the regulations change every single day. Voices like Alex are so important for this industry, and I hope you follow him on all of the channels. We'll link as many as we can in the show notes, as well as the video we talked about with Too Simple. As always, thank you for stopping by. I am so grateful and so blessed that you take the time. Have a great rest of your day. And then I hit the button, it stops. Goes away.